Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Je me présente ici avec Adam van Koeverden, qui est secrétaire parlementaire de Santé Canada. Il y a une semaine, j'ai envoyé une lettre au chef conservateur Pierre Poilievre pour lui demander de clarifier sa position sur le programme de soins dentaires du gouvernement canadien. Après une semaine, nous n'avons toujours pas reçu de réponse. Sa réponse est nécessaire puisque nous sommes présentement en contexte d'élections partielles dans 4 circonscriptions du Canada où la position de M. Poilievre sur les soins dentaires doit être connue pour que les gens puissent voter en pleine connaissance de cause. J'ai les chiffres ici. Dans NDG Westmount, nous avons présentement jusqu'à un peu plus de 320 enfants qui ont reçu la prestation dentaire. Dans Portage-Lisgar, c'est plus de 700 enfants. Dans Oxford, c'est plus de 760 enfants. Et dans Winnipeg South Centre, c'est près de 1200 enfants qui ont reçu la prestation dentaire canadienne. Dans le comté de M. Poilievre, dans Carleton, ce sont plus de 1100 enfants qui ont reçu cette prestation dentaire canadienne. M. Poilievre, est-ce qu'on peut savoir ce que vous pensez de l'importance pour ces enfants d'avoir des soins dentaires appropriés?
Comme le ministre a dit, nous avons une question pour le chef de le Parti conservateur sur l'enjeu de le soin dentaire. I've knocked on doors in Oxford, and I've spoken with parents of young children there, and they are receiving this dental benefit because their kids are now having access to dental care and oral health is health. This is an affordability measure as well as a health care measure. So the question to Pierre Poilievre is, there are 1,100 children in the riding of Carleton that are now having access to dental care as a result of the dental benefit. Mr. Poilievre has had access to government-funded dental care through his benefits package as a member of Parliament for almost 2 decades, and I believe strongly that his constituents deserve the same. My riding of Milton has about the same number of people as Carleton, and there are also 1,100 children who now have access to dental care. It's essential that this program continue for the health and the oral health of these children. In closing, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that today is Clean Air Day, and it's the day with probably the worst air quality in Ottawa's as long as I can remember, certainly, and I've only been here for a few years, but I used to train here when I was an athlete. So please, if you are a parent, if you are a young person, if you're a senior, or if you're otherwise vulnerable, please be careful out there. The air quality is very dangerous, underscoring the necessity of us to take the climate emergency seriously and mitigate these harmful extreme weather events that are resulting in more common and more severe wildfires. Thank you.
Oh, you looking for questions from me? Okay, sure. Tell me about the dental care program. It's not really anything like the MP's plan. You guys get way better dental care than everybody else. Do you see a point where this is going to transition to a more complete, robust dental care program? And also, what about pharmacare? You guys talk a lot about dental care as if this was like some great breakthrough you did. You only did it because the NDP forced your hand on this. And you seem to have completely abandoned any interest in the pharmacare program. When are we going to see that?
Well, 3 aspects of your question. The first one is the first part of the dental care. The second thing is about the long-term path to dental care, and then, as you said, pharmacare. So first, on the dental benefit, that's a first start. It's already helping 300,000 children, which is considerable. It's well above the expectation that we had prior to launching the benefit in December 2022. So that says that the need for dental care for lower-income families, those that don't have private insurance, with young children, that need is very significant. We thought it would be the case. Now we know it's the case. Now we also know that this is going to be enhanced and transitioned to a long-term dental plan, which will look like the dental plans to which millions of Canadians have had access over decades, including Mr. Poilievre as a member of Parliament. That is going to start by the end of 2023. The question that we're asking Mr. Poilievre, given what he should know about the value of dental care, given he has received dental care for himself and his family for almost 20 years, given that he knows that value, why doesn't he not recognize that it's also important for children and family in his riding? It's already 1,100 children in his riding whose parents have asked for the benefits, so it's obviously of great value to his citizens. But why has he not ever spoken about that particular value himself? Now, on farmer care, we have said that we will be tabling a house by the end of 2023, hoping to pass it, but obviously that will require support by other members of Parliament. Fortunately, we're working with the NDP on developing this farmer care bill, and we look forward to showing it and to discussing it with Canadians.
Minister, any Stellantis news coming tomorrow with the Brits?
Listen, you're asking me at 10 a.m., now you're asking me at noon and now at 2. Listen, things are ongoing.
It could change.
Things are ongoing, you know, like I said, we want a good deal for the workers, for the industry in Canada, and we're getting close to the end.
And why is it a good deal for Canada? Why haven't we seen the economic figures that show why this huge amount of money is actually going to pay dividends and not just lead to, you know, hundreds of $1,000s per worker and that's it for the economy?
Well, the world has changed. You cannot look at that per workers because those are contingent liabilities. So it's not like you're giving a check. First, they need to build a plan. And once the plan is built, subject to production and sales, and subject to the IRA being in place, not being repealed or reduced, eventually, perhaps, there'll be a support on production. But I would say what we're building is the economy of the future, and I can tell you everyone in the world would dream of having a Stellantis plant in their jurisdiction. We're competing with Europe, we're competing with the United States, and it's a very good deal for Canada. Here we go.
Well, Arthur Irving's talking about selling Irving Oil. What do you think? That's a huge change for New Brunswick.
I haven't spoken to Mr. Irving in a number of years, and it's a private company, and they can take the responsibility for the decisions they make.
Minister, on the supply and confidence deal, why do you think it's not at risk, despite the fact that you're getting so much pressure from the NDP on foreign interference?
I always thought we'd get pressure from opposition parties. That shouldn't surprise anybody. If we didn't get pressure from opposition parties, that would be even more surprising. I sit on the SACO Oversight Committee with 2 Liberal colleagues and 3 NDP colleagues, and the meetings are cordial, constructive. We're focusing on the to-do list that Mr. Singh and the Prime Minister agreed upon. And I think we're making progress, and it's very constructive. I don't think that it's tenuous at all.
How does it differ from how you operate in a minority government without such a deal? Like, what's different?
I think you've seen a shared commitment to make Parliament work. In previous minority parliaments, where I've been a member of Parliament, the ability for a reckless opposition party that wants to vandalize legislation like the Conservatives, those opportunities would be a lot higher if we didn't have a constructive partner that decided to work with us to make Parliament work. You're seeing that in a number of votes in the House of Commons. It's because we're working collaboratively on these shared objectives. So I think that should be a proof point that the SACA agreement is going very well.
And what kind of concessions are you making on the Liberal side to get things like the NDP to agree to time allocation, for example, to get the government legislation through the House?
I don't think it's a question of concessions. I think they're looking at the appalling behavior of Mr. Poilievre and the Conservatives. Mr. Poilievre brags publicly, good news, we're going to deprive Canadians of important benefits by bringing up fake technical points of order and pretending that the headphones or the translation doesn't work. So I don't think it's only NDP MPs that should find that a bizarre way for a national parliament to function. So I think as long as we work constructively with the NDP on those shared priorities that Mr. Singh and the Prime Minister agreed to, we should have every confidence that we can continue to collaborate.
And just a bit of a different note, how do you view the Conservative tactics, as you say, in the House of Commons, any differently than your own party's tactics in the House of Commons when you were third party and Stephen Harper had a majority government, when we ended up with overnight budget votes? What's the difference? I
would think if you look at those overnight budget votes, a lot of them were driven at that point by Elizabeth May. I remember being an opposition MP in those days. I think if you looked at the number of times that we engage in a whole series of procedural foolishness, it might, in the 4 years we were an opposition party, you couldn't find the same number of examples that you would in one afternoon with Mr. Poilievre this week. Merci, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, JS.
Hi, Minister. Got to ask you about the new CEO for the National Gallery in both languages. Why is this man the best person for the job? Like, what does he bring? Why come from the Museum of Joliet to the National Gallery?
Well, Jean-François brings so much to this positions, his experience, his expertise, his personal relationship with many of the big players, the big donors across the country, internationally, the experience that he has here in Canada, but also abroad, and the fact that he made the Musée de Joliette such a big success.
So you're saying he can raise money? That's a good thing?
He can do a lot of things. He's a rising star. I'm very happy. We're privileged to have him.
And I got to ask you, because there are so many internal issues that are public on the street, people know about them. Can the gentleman actually calm things down and move the staff forward there?
Well, he proved it in the past. I think he has the personal and human capacities to manage a lot of people in that situation, and that's probably one of the reasons we picked him.
Minister, can I ask you on the supply and confidence agreement?
And then I'm going to ask you
you're part of the oversight committee between the NDP and the Liberals, the 6 MPs who sort of hash out issues. Can you explain a bit why you think the deal for the confidence and supply is not at risk right now, given all the pressure from the NDP on foreign interference, or do you feel like it is at risk?
No, because the way this committee works. We get into that room and we say everything we have to say. And sometimes they're tough conversations, but one of the things that I really like about this committee is even if we're not on the same team, we can talk to each other very frankly, and sometimes it could be a little bit rough, but when we go out of there, we know that we spoke the truth, and we look for solutions.
But why isn't it at risk? Why, despite the pressure, why does the Liberals feel so comfortable with NDP supporting them when they're pushing them so hard on foreign interference?
First of all, we never take anything for granted, right? But based on the type of relationship and trust that we're able to build in that committee and the goodwill, I think we're in a good spot, but we have to see.
Il y a beaucoup de problèmes avec les personnes qui les emploient de le musée. Qu'est-ce que le nouveau chef a changé dans la culture de beaucoup de problèmes?
Oui, la personne choisie, Jean-François, a démontré par le passé à plus d'une reprise qu'il a cette capacité-là en termes de relations humaines, cette capacité d'interagir avec les gens pour créer un bon milieu de travail de façon efficace. Alors moi, je suis très confiant que ça va faire beaucoup de bien au musée.
We gotta go. You're on Hester. You gotta go. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Emergency coordination team.
To tell you the truth, I have no direct idea on that. Obviously, what we are looking right now, it's concerning thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Canadians, obviously. We are all concerned with that. And what we're asking is to work hand in hand with the provincial jurisdiction. As you know, there is a fine line to draw between the federal authorities and the provincial jurisdiction, and we have to work hand in hand on that. Thank you.
I've got a letter for Minister Freeland. Petitioners in my riding asked for some type of reprieve, and this was a citizen-driven petition, and the minister rejected their request. We're 2 years into this recovery. We haven't seen the results that are necessary, and people are still suffering. It's just a sad situation. That's all I want to say today.
It's time for a national emergency response agency, like FEMA.
Well, you know what? I think we need to look more broadly about how natural disasters are examined and how the government responds to it. I think with all of the forest fires we're seeing right now in British Columbia as well, in my riding, the government of Canada needs to look very closely how it's allocating resources. And I say that in a nonpartisan way. We're just dealing with more and more, and we need to be in a position to make sure that people are safe and that we have recovery plans in place so that people can get their lives back as quickly as possible.
Why should the federal government pay for it? Like, what's the... I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just trying to ask you to explain.
Taxation power. Taxation power. the provinces don't have the resources that the federal government does.
They have taxation powers too.
Not in the same way the federal government does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bon après-midi, good afternoon, everybody. A few quick comments, and I really regret having to come to you with this today, but enough is enough. It's come to my attention that the Conservative candidate for NDG Westmount in an interview stated that women voted for their Prime Minister based on his looks. That is demeaning to all women. It's misogynistic. And from having spoken to women in my riding and across the country, I know that women, like most Canadian voters, they vote based on the policies and the platforms put forward by the parties, and they vote based on their own interests and their own values. If this were not part of a pattern, perhaps we could dismiss it, but it is part of a Conservative strategy that involves many things, including just this week, the Conservative candidate in Portage-Lisgar stated that he was 100% pro-life and that he would vote for any piece of legislation in the House of Commons that would advance anti-choice initiatives. We also heard Pierre Poilievre state that our national daycare strategy was a slush fund. And of course, there were the misogynistic hashtags on YouTube that were used in order to attract anti-women voters to their websites. So as part of a strategy that the Conservative Party has put forward, I feel it incumbent upon me as a woman to denounce that, and I am calling on Pierre Poilievre to denounce the comments of his Conservative candidate. I'll repeat that in French before taking your questions. Je regrette devoir venir devant vous aujourd'hui, mais trop, c'est trop. Le candidat conservateur dans NDG Westmount a indiqué lors d'une entrevue que les femmes canadiennes ont voté pour le premier ministre basé sur son apparence. C'est honteux, c'est misogyne. Et je sais, pour avoir parlé à des femmes dans ma communauté et de partout à travers le Canada, que les femmes canadiennes votent basées sur leur intérêt et les plateformes et les politiques proposées par les partis. Ceci fait partie d'un tout, d'une stratégie du Parti conservateur. On a vu que le candidat conservateur dans Portage-Lisgar cette semaine a indiqué qu'il était 100% pro-vie et qu'il allait voter pour toute législation qui allait avancer les initiatives anti-choix. On a vu également Pierre Poilievre caractériser notre programme pour la garde d'enfants comme étant une caisse noire, un slush fund, il a dit. Et bien sûr, il y avait les mots-clics misogynes qui ont été rajoutés à la page YouTube des conservateurs afin d'attirer des électeurs anti-femmes. Trop, c'est trop, comme je disais. Puis c'est le temps pour Pierre Poilievre de dénoncer les commentaires de son candidat conservateur. Je suis prête à prendre vos questions. Merci beaucoup.